This Ventra Pro video will demonstrate how to add and set up a single phase variable speed type fan to our Ventra Pro controller. We'll start by adding the device, which would be similar to most all the devices we'll be adding. We'll go to System Setup and then arrow down until we see press Enter to add a control device. We'll hit Enter, and then we'll have to step through the devices, either plus or minus, to go up the list or down the list. So in this case, we'll just call it a variable pit fan, and it's going to be our first variable pit fan. Zone 1, this room that we're working with, set 1 is already defaulted because that's the set we're working on. Module 1 is this Ventra Pro box, and then we hit Enter again to get to the channel number, and we'll put it on channel number, how about if we put it on number 32. And enter again to confirm. So now we've added the device to the channel 32. We check by hitting the hotkey next to the toggle switch on 32, and up pops our variable pit fan settings. Now, when we now we'll next go into setting it up, but one thing to note: variable pit fan, a variable single phase fan, is typically a hog application. There are a few times that it's used, like with turkeys or other poultry applications, but it would be a smaller fan that actually has a motor that's a PSC type motor that is made for doing variable speed. We don't want to try to do this with one with like a start and a run cap, the 2-cap type centrifugal switched winding motor. So, which would be the case typically on anything belt drive. These would only be direct drive. So in that application, here we would have a pit fan, and we'll want to go ahead and get it set up. So again, the first setting is use of sensors. So we'll leave it at all so that it's using all the ones in the room. We could choose that and set certain sensors. We want temp sensor 1 and 2 or 3 and 4 only to be used for this, so that would be possible. The operating mode, like other fans, we can set it up to be run for tunnel, cool, and purge, tunnel and purge, tunnel and cool. So the heat options are ones that we'd probably avoid, because that would be working like a heater where it's going to come on as the temperature falls rather than as the temperature goes up. So this is, even a pit fan typically is going to have a temperature. So we'll just go ahead and set it as tunnel, cool, and purge, so it can be used for min vent, it can be used for cooling, it could be left running during the time we have our tunnel mode operating. So the next thing is on temp, off temp. In a hog application, sometimes this is set very low, like just above the freezing point, just so that this fan would always be running at low speed. So it's when it starts coming on and being variable, it'll start at its low speed, what we set later, and then it'll go off only when it gets below that point, so a lower number for the off temperature. So sometimes these are set like 40 degrees, and 39.9 might be a typical thing in a hog environment, because you would hope it would never get that cold in there, and you want it always to be running at least at low speed. The next setting is fan on power settings. The default is 25, like we see here. We'll have to wait for this thing to write. There we go. When you hit Enter to edit that setting for the power on, what power level you're going to have this fan go at, and it's an arbitrary, just a number between 0 and 60 that's used. It's not linear. 30 isn't half speed, that's less than half speed of 60. So you have to do this by trial and error. So the first question is, do you want to test these? And if you hit yes, then it's going to run the fan at the speed as you're adjusting and trying different values. So likely as not, you're going to want to have it at 30 or 32 or 35 or some number in that range, just as you watch that fan to make sure it's not going to stall out with a little headwind or any problem like that. So it's a way to see what's going on. If you ever want to test your variable on your fans, you can go in here and just go up and down, and you can even cancel out and leave your current setting in place. But in this case, we'll set it at 32. Power ramping. So we had earlier had our on and off temp, so it comes on at 77.5. So that's based on an offset from our set point that's in control settings. And so 77.5. So when are we going to start ramping? Well, even if you have that on temp at like 39, you'll want the ramp to start sometime later. So it stays at low speed until it starts ramping, and that's this point. So in this case, it's shown at 81.5. Generally, this would just be just over set point. It'll start ramping up. And I'm not sure what the set point on this one is, but you'd typically set that for just above set point. And then full power, when it's done ramping, going to the full speed of the fan would be the next setting. So you're ramping between this previous setting of 81.5 to 87.5, and then you want it at full speed. Now, likely as not, you would set this closer so that it's only, maybe a 4-degree swing or less. But in this case, that's where this is at. Full power is 60, so you might as well leave that at 60. Generally, always, there's no reason not to have the fan run at full speed. It's actually best for the fan to reach full speed at some point. And then the next question is run mode, temp only, and we could step through the other options. You can do timed or min vent. So if you're doing a min vent cycle, instead of using that low speed fan for the min vent, you could do that. In this case, we're just going to stick to kind of a typical swine application where they'd be using only temp. And then the question of run during entry and exit of tunnel, used for proportional control. If you want your inlets, if it's ceiling inlets, sidewall inlets, whatever kind of inlets for cooling to crack open for this fan running, you'll want to set that up. And then in the proportional settings, have the inlet open so many inches for however much fan, which is graduated in 0 inches for 0 fans to 0.5 with a variable like this one, where if it's over half of full speed, it'll be running, it'll go to that opening size. Okay, so that's important for your inlet, and then we're back around to which sensors to use. So that's adding and setting up a variable speed single phase fan primarily for the hog market.